bring the energy, he'll do the rest. Martinez Company, powered by Sports Radio 102.9 The Game.
You're going to hear it right here.
The show starts now.
All right, good morning. Before the formal introductions are done here for the show, there's no other way than to start off Victory Monday with just a little bit of Meek Mill, because you got to get that same championship mentality and mode and everything else that we had back in 2017. I'm not even worried about what happened with Arizona, because this is the feels that you get off that win last night.
Like Batman and with Robbie, this two-door Maybach with my seat on reclining. I'm like, real wood up, real wood up. If you ain't about that murder game, then shut up. If you dip me in your ass, I get your pussy stuck up. When you touch down in my hood, no, that tour life ain't good. Kept me down in MIA, and then he game on wood. With that pull my life in my feet, like that little engine I could. Boy, I slide down in your block, like on 12 o'clock. And they be throwing deuces on the same day watch.
That's the way you got to start the show. Welcome. It is a Victory Monday here on Martinez Company, brought to you by Sports Radio 102.9 The Game. Nonetheless, it is that time. Yes, being back in the Super Bowl, LIX 59, or as Gronk likes to say, Super Bowl licks. Either way, it doesn't matter. It is Victory Monday here in Tampa, Florida, and I'm quite sure back in my hometown of Philadelphia, everybody that you could possibly imagine was out there at Broad Street, just enjoyed themselves, just like I did back in 2017 after leaving from Lincoln Financial Field. As you guys had saw, I posted up there on the socials. The tickets, thanks to, at the time, was 94 WIP with John Barchard and crew, who gave us tickets that evening to go out there to the game. And my brother Jimmy Seltzer, who surprised us with it. And off we went into that night after beating Minnesota on just a landslide victory. And then yesterday, who knew that the way the game went into turn out? I know that Seth Joyner had mentioned it was in snowball's chance in hell that the Redskins would be able to pull off the win. And you know what? I said that I don't think it would be that big, but you know what? Seth Joyner knew a whole lot more, and rightfully so, than I did, because man, was he absolutely right. It is Monday here, January 27th, 2025, Victory Monday. For those who like to follow us here on the Coastal Sports Network, of course, you can do so over the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, on Coastal Sports Network, also on SR1029 on Instagram as well, also on Twitter. You guys can make all your comments here live on the socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, X, Kicks, and Rumble as well. And of course, you can always call or text the show at 727-858-6650, 727-858-6650. And man, what a game. We're going to have some sounders coming up here, nonetheless, by Nick Sirianni, who, by the way, the only thing that I wanted, what's up, Trevor? Listen, I could have had Trevor up here. Matter of fact, Trevor, if there's not a big Eagles bar, and I'm glad because I was going to reach out to you today as well. If there's not a big Eagles bar out there in Miami, come up this way in 2 weeks to Tampa Joe's. Just come up this way. It'll be a great time, because I tell you what, that house, I'm quite sure, was absolutely rocking at Tampa Joe's. And for those who don't know, Tampa Joe's here, a great sponsor of the show. Not only that, but you can visit tampajoes.com and or go to the restaurant, 9316 Anderson Road in beautiful Tampa, Florida. A hop, skip, and a jump over from the airport. That is the home of the Philly to South, the Facebook group that's out there by Mike Klein and Michelle Manley. You guys can join them every single week during the football season. And even after season's over, there's always great food, great atmosphere, and a great time at Tampa Joe's. But man, oh man, oh man, what a victory it was. For the first time in a long time, the confidence level you could feel. And yesterday, if anybody knew anything, it was exactly my wife, because being in the studio and just kind of tensing up at times, just waiting to see what was going to happen, was absolutely phenomenal. And when I mean it is the 2017 feels, it is exactly that. So it's almost, you'd have to remember what you were doing back in 2017 just to repeat the same process leading up to it. Now, thankfully, we are covering the Pro Bowl this week, so even though we won't be at Radio Row this year, it's going to be a lot of fun to be at the Pro Bowl, so I get half of what the fun would end up being coming up. This is just, man, oh man, I just can't wait. Trevor says, by the way, There's 3, one on Delray Beach, one in Fort Lauderdale, and one in Miami Beach, and one for each county. Well, that's what it sounds like. But man, I tell you what, I know that one here, Trevor, in the local area, it is absolutely insane. I want to know, do you have to work? And by the way, Trevor, if you want to jump in, I don't know what you're doing as far as this morning, but by all means, if you want to jump on with me this morning, the open invite is there for you. But I didn't know you have to constantly be working. You have stuff going on with Miami. I know stuff with the Panthers, but I'm just wondering if you end up having to work. So I just want to know if you end up coming in or not as far as the work. As a couple things going on here. Dylan's on the line. Duncan Dad says, "Go Birds!" Listen, it is Victory Monday here on the network, and a little exciting, obviously, because we know there's going to be controversy is going to come along with it. If you guys had just heard Pete this morning, he had talked about some of the stuff that went on. I know a lot of folks have been saying, again, it's conspiracy theorists, call it whatever you want. But there's been a lot of things that have been said as far as when it comes to how in the world, once again, the NFL and the script and the colors to the logo and blah, 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 all this stuff is going on. And yet here we are again talking about Kansas City. And when I was there last year for Radio Row, you can, as much as you want to go nuts about KC, the big thing was that listening to Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey, Andy Reid, being out there at Allegiant Stadium on that Monday, it's like you couldn't hate those guys only because the confidence that they had. And again, there's a difference between confidence and cocky, but the confidence they had was absolutely, absolutely insane. And you could just tell that they were a lot better than their counterparts in San Fran. So I am just hoping, once again, this season, that we'll be able to do exactly what needs to be done in order to pull off, once again, another victory, maybe the second ring for our Philadelphia Eagles. But on the line with me here, straight out of Rolex 24, here locally, is Dylan Spalding. You guys can check out his content, Auto Racing Digest. But I'm pretty sure other than racing material, I don't know. Dylan, what else is on the mind this morning?
I was exhausted, as you might imagine, covering a 24-hour race. I technically was up probably for 36 hours, given me being up from 8 a.m. on Saturday till about 8 p.m. last night. So definitely got some sleep last night. It felt good to be back in my home bed and relax and get to chill. And, a lot of stuff going on, obviously, doing some baseball work here coming up, as well as spring trainings on the docket coming up in a few weeks. The Blue Jays are getting ready to go. So a lot of stuff coming up here on the docket, and, just enjoy myself right now. So it was a great weekend.
No, it's always good to be busy. It's good because I know with the content, and it's not easy, as a lot of people, those who may not know, it's not easy when you have to do stuff by yourself. You know it, I know it. It's tough because I know there's only so many things that can be approved, so many people that are able to be a part of the action. But it wasn't, I know it was a little bit of a chilly weather up there in Daytona. May not have been as chilly as it was here. I mean, we woke up to Saturday morning to 24 degrees before it finally hit up to 65. But what was how busy was it up there? I know there was, the traffic, from what I understand, at parts, it got to be extremely horrendous up that neck of the woods because there's not that many roads to access. But how was it overall?
Overall, it was amazing. Absolutely incredible race. Came down right to the wire. It felt like the last hour. And in the NFL, and if anybody watches Red Zone, everybody kind of says, or I should say Scott Hansen always says, the like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock hours, like the witching hour, when wins become losses and losses become wins. That kind of how it felt like here in the IMSA Rolex race. The last hour was just chaotic. A late yellow came out with about 45 minutes left to go, and it really changed the complexion of the race, bunched up everybody again, and we saw a handful of lead changes, a lot of back and forth. It was quite an incredible finish to a very exciting weekend. There was a lot of big incidents that happened. There was a big wreck involving the number 40 Cadillac for Wayne Taylor Racing, big wreck for the Cadillac for Action Express, the Wheeling Cadillac. Just a handful of major incidents that happened throughout the weekend. They updated the Le Mans chicane in the back straightaway, so A lot of suspension failures, a lot of drivers saying that the update, which came due to the big NASCAR crash that happened a couple of years ago with Ryan Preece at the track, a lot of people are saying that the update at the Le Mans chicane kind of was the catalyst for it. But overall, great weekend, great crowds, really, really awesome to see IMSA in such a healthy spot, and let alone the sport. I mean, Angel, it really felt like I was at the Daytona 500. It really did, and it was great to see the crowds. It was even hard getting into the actual track alone. So it was great to see. Really awesome stuff, and happy I was able to be there for the race. It was a lot of fun.
And by the way, Gaspam Guy texts in. He says, "What's up, fellas? Good to hear you on the show again, Dylan." So as he texted the line, no, I did hear like some of the traffic obviously getting onto the track was definitely a little bit nuts. And I know they're doing work on that front booth up there when you pull into Daytona. At least they were when we were there for ARCA practice, but. It was good to see because again the weather could have been a bigger factor than what it was, and thankfully I guess it wasn't too bad, but it definitely could have played a bigger factor into it. And then there was rumors, and obviously some folks were saying that they may not have gone if it would have gotten any colder or the expected rain that it may have been coming through. But from what I understand, you guys had absolutely no rain, correct?
Yeah, no rain at all. It was very chilly, and I did think that played a big factor into the tire strategy this weekend. A lot of drivers were very nervous about tire strategy and kind of how that was going to be a factor, obviously, with it being colder. Tires are also getting eaten up a bit more. A lot of teams were really kind of playing with house money and kind of, playing poker, if you will, with the tire strategy, given of how the weather was and just given the elements and such. So definitely that was something to keep an eye on throughout the weekend. But yeah, fortunately no rain. Very happy about that. It did rain on Thursday during qualifying and during the Mazda race, but beautiful weather on Friday, beautiful weather on Saturday and Sunday. Big wreck in the Mazda race on Friday, by the way, and that was something that was wild. Never seen that one before. But yeah, overall weather was great. It was a little cold on Saturday night, but overall it was great weather, and happy that there was no rain in the forecast. So that was good.
Now, for those who obviously didn't see the race, could you give them a little insight? As you're talking about the big crash here with the Mazda, what ended up happening there?
Yeah, so that was on Friday. That was in the Mazda MX-5 Cup race. For people who are kind of new to IMSA or have never watched sports car racing before, the main series that raced this weekend was the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, which has many different cars. They have prototype cars, which are kind of all spec cars, if you will, and then they also have GT cars, which are kind of what you see on the road, like Corvettes and Mustangs and everything like that. So in the Mazda race, those are all MX-5 Miatas, basically. And there was literally on lap one, the green flag comes out. I forgot who exactly it was that caused the incident, but there were two cars kind of in the third row on the start of the race and got kind of pushed up towards the wall, basically got hooked into the wall and came back down onto the bottom of the track. And 17 cars were involved, and more honestly than that, but 17 cars unfortunately had to retire from the race because of how big the crash was. And Angel, you could probably go check it out. Everybody could go check it out on Twitter. It was one of the biggest crashes I've ever seen in IMSA before, and it was a wild scene. It felt like it was the Daytona 500 and the big one happening, and that's basically what everybody was saying, is that the big one happened before NASCAR even got to Daytona. So it was definitely a wild scene to open up the weekend, especially for me. That was the first race I saw in person for the weekend, and talk about a wild scene, and it definitely set the stage for the rest of the weekend going forward.
Well, speaking about NASCAR, we have about 3 weeks before we're back at the track there for Speed Weeks. Week. I know a lot of people like to say Speed Weeks because it feels that way. But Speed Week, everybody's going to be back there again. ARCA, Frigger Craftsman Truck Series, Xfinity, and obviously for NASCAR. So that one, I mean, that's going to be an absolute insane madhouse. I can't wait to be back up there again so we can cover some more stuff up there for not only City Garage Motorsports, but obviously with you and what you do for NASCAR as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun, chaotic. I'm certain that it's going to end up happening, which is going to be absolutely terrific. But There's also more stuff coming up this week that you guys are going to be covering as well, correct?
Yeah, busy week this week. We got the NASCAR Cup Series back in action. The Busch Clash is this weekend, or the Cookout Classic, or whatever it is. They've renamed it this year. So we got the Clash this weekend on Sunday up at Bowman Gray. So we'll obviously be doing stuff there. We got Supercross as well there in Glendale. Next week they will be in Tampa, so we'll actually be at the stadium. We'll be there covering Supercross. So stay tuned for coverage on that. We'll have stuff out on that as well. It's going to be another busy week of racing coverage. A lot of stuff came out last week. A lot of Daytona 500 commitments have been being said and made. So, obviously my view is getting ready for the 500, but there's still a lot of racing to cover, still a lot of exciting things happening. And, it's going to be a good couple of weeks here as we lead up to the 500. I can't wait. So
if the turnout this year, and I know they're trying to make it bigger now, obviously for the fires that have happened in California, might have deterred people to go out there. But I guess you would kind of do a small pass if that's the case. But is the Busch Clash, if things don't keep going well, Dylan? I mean, last year they didn't have the same crowd that it had year one when Ice Cube had performed early on. But if it continues to draw low numbers, will NASCAR continue that Busch Clash in California?
Well, they've actually already moved it. It's actually in a new location. It's at a very historic racetrack. It's called Bowman Gray. It's an old football stadium that they turned into a racetrack many years ago. It's became a racetrack, and almost all the main stars that you see in NASCAR have raced at that track at some point in their life. It's actually one of the more historical NASCAR grassroots tracks, and the Cup Series is going there, and there is going to be a handful of kind of one-off drivers that are going to be racing. Rick Ware Racing is going to have Tim Brown in the car, who is now like their race engineer, but he is now coming back to make his Cup Series debut, and he's been known to be racing up at that track. And Burt Myers, who is also he's a 12-time or 11-time, Bowman Gray champion over at the track. So he'll be running for Team Amerivet, which used to be the team owned by Floyd Mayweather, the Team Money team, or the Money team, So they did move it out of California. I do think last year was, I think the time was up for the track. Last year was a little bit of a different situation because it was supposed to rain on that Sunday, so they moved it to Saturday. So I think the interest and the draw was low, just given the change, the sudden shift to racing on Saturday. But I'm excited for the Bowman Gray race. I think it's going to be great to have kind of one of these grassroots tracks back on the schedule. And NASCAR is still trying to keep its heritage, if you will, within the sport, and trying to, bring back some of these historic speedways like Bowman Gray and what's the other track up in North Carolina, whatever the All-Star race is, North Wilkesboro. So it's good to see NASCAR's trying to kind of, harken back to its roots, if you will, and it's going to be exciting to see how the turnout's going to be. I think it's going to be a packed house, and it's going to be great to see.
Yeah, people didn't see the video that came across on Twitter. You guys can go back and take a look at it, as you had mentioned. And I understand he moved, but I was trying to get to another question here. But for those who haven't seen it, as Dylan was talking about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dylan, the video feed that came across Twitter. Now they were doing a light show, meaning that they had music going on with the lights that are trying to make it hyped up, rightfully so, because they're trying to get a packed house. But if you really look at the video, it looks, honest to God, like they're running around a track and field team. It doesn't even look like a NASCAR circuit team.
Yeah, and again, it's an old football stadium, so it doesn't have that look of a regular track, if you will. It does kind of look like a bit of a track and field, track, if you will, surrounding a big football field. But that's basically how the track was. Originally it was built for football, and then they've repurposed it. It's been a track for a while, so they repurposed it probably like 40 years ago or 50 years ago, something of that nature. So. It is a unique venue, but the amount of history that's happened there, the amount of of drivers that have came through that track and have basically kind of built their name through Bowman Gray is pretty astonishing. There's been a lot of racing that's happened there, especially NASCAR sanctioned racing or NASCAR affiliated racing that's been done there. So it is a unique venue, but I think it does fit better with the schedule. Not having to go out to California, it's definitely more of a purpose-built track. Although even though it's still kind of like LA, where it's not, it is much more of a NASCAR track than it is LA. And I think with it being in North Carolina, you're going to draw interest. People love racing in that area, and I think there is going to be a great crowd, and I think it will be a success. I think it's going to be a great scene, and again, we'll see how the racing is, and we'll see how the first race goes. But it is going to be nice, and it's going to be more logistically better for teams before they head to Daytona to be at least on the East Coast rather than having to travel all the way out west and then come back east.
No, it's a lot better. That's why I didn't understand. Like I get it, I understand it. NASCAR was trying to do something different by going out there to LA Coliseum, but it's not the same. It was the same way like before. You had you start at Daytona and then you go across to Phoenix for race number 2, then you're coming back for the Atlanta race.
Yep.
Like some of this stuff, logistically, it just didn't make any sense. I mean, it was a haul for these teams. And for people that don't know, like if you have a team out of North Carolina, obviously they have a set of haulers that go down to Florida. Then the cars, they're not wrecked, either go back to North Carolina in case they have to make any adjustments to the ones that were in the hauler, or if not, they'll make their way, for example, to out towards the West Coast. And then the original hauler that was in Florida will go to North Carolina, pick up a new set of cars, and then there's always a constant shift and move. But I never understood the same way. I don't think, not for nothing, and God bless the folks out there in Arizona, like our, hermano here, Penguin Azias, he says, what up, hermano, in chat, yo. But my big thing is, I don't like some of the stuff that NASCAR has done, and this as we've talked about this. The NASCAR championship at the end of the season ends up in Arizona. I don't understand why in the world. Like if you don't want it at Homestead anymore, okay, I get it, but put it elsewhere. It just doesn't make any sense to me that you're going to Homestead and then championship weekend is out in the desert. I don't know if, they decided that the weather factor, which I don't think would be, that being the case, but I just don't understand why in the world they want to do that. The same way, your 4th of July race that was moved out of Daytona is no longer Daytona. There was just so many shifts and changes that have been done by NASCAR. And I don't even know if it's paid dividends or for them or not, because I know a lot of folks were pissed off, especially when the 4th of July race went away from Daytona.
Yeah, that's definitely, and now they're in Chicago, which again, there's a lot of rumors if that race is even going to be surviving after this year. That's kind of been a big talking point early on this year, is this could even be the last time that Chicago gets a race. I think hopefully that it won't rain this year, that we can maybe actually see how the track actually is as a race and kind of what that track may bring. But no, I think, we're going to see, we'll see how everything kind of plays out here. Obviously they've adjusted the schedule a little bit this year to logistically, in terms of going from Daytona to Atlanta. They're kind of doing out east first and then moving. So that's a positive. Again, we'll see what ends up happening going forward. If they're going to, make the championship kind of, if they're going to change the championship and kind of the picture of that, if you will, going forward in terms of where they're hosting it. There's been a lot of talks. Maybe they'll have a rotational type thing. And, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think a lot of it does come to weather, and I also think infrastructure. But those two tracks are kind of in the middle of nowhere. They're not even in proper Miami or proper Phoenix. So, I don't know. We'll see going forward where they decide to put the championship at, and maybe they'll do a rotational thing, but we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, but even still, if they decide to do a rotational thing, again, it comes down to logistics. I don't listen. Yeah. I wouldn't have a problem if it ended up in Charlotte at the very, or even in Darlington for that matter. I just think you're really cutting off the fan base because there's, if we're being completely honest, there's a lot of folks that are not going to the desert for a 4-day weekend or a 3-day weekend at the end of NASCAR season. Yeah. I don't see it. You would have a bigger turnout with a track here in Florida or again in the Carolinas than you would going across to the West Coast. Or I know Texas, Texas kind of draws a big crowd, but Texas is also losing a little bit of luster as well. And I think
Yep.
that it's nothing against the actual fan base. I just think how NASCAR continues to alter things when you should have just left well enough alone. And they continue to tweak and modify. And there's just some of us that believed in the sport the way it was back in the day. This segment, yet fighting for it. I mean, it gets to be annoying when it comes to NASCAR with some of the stuff. We all look forward to the Great American Race, and it's a shame they start out with the Super Bowl in the very beginning of the season, which is, and that within itself, it's I guess for some folks it's fine, but in the end, NASCAR has to really kind of sit down and think about things they want to do, because we've lost one of two road course races. You had Watkins Glen up there in New York.
Yeah, Watkins Glen is still there.
Right.
And Sonoma as well is on the schedule. Yeah, I mean, it's changing. I mean, it's definitely a changing landscape for NASCAR. I mean, you look at it, you got Mexico City now on the schedule. They're trying to make this a global sport. And I think to an extent, I think it's good to be able to still stay global and, bring that aspect of things to NASCAR. But I also do believe that, you also got to be able to still keep, that fan base that has been around for decades, in the sport as well. So, I think some of what NASCAR is doing is good. I think some of what they're doing is, maybe kind of not what I was hoping for. But, we'll see how the series continues to evolve and change things going forward. I think the one thing is just finding that sweet consistency, right? And I think that's what most fans just want. They want consistency. They want a good balance with everything, and they want to be able to kind of not only have the series, draw interest in new fans, but also being able to also cater to some of these older fans as well. So I think just finding that balance is going to be huge for the series going forward.
I hope so, because they really need to do something in order to change it up, because other than that, you're going to keep losing more of the fan base. And I know Ark Menard, first series coming in here, first year, as being owned by NASCAR. I know that should hopefully draw in a good crowd for the folks who want to see racing the way it's supposed to be. But again, we shall see. Before I go back into Eagles talk as well, the Tampa Bay Rays continue to be just a mess of an organization. Still nothing to be decided. You also have St. Pete's Council playing the blame game, between the owner of the Tampa Bay Rays and then the St. Pete Council. No one at this point knows anything, what's truly going on, because it's a constant point. No, we said this, but we said we're not going to do that. Yeah, we said we're going to do this, but we're not going to do that. Now, the Rays are basically saying that St. Pete Council said, oh, by the way, we never said that we had to have the repairs done by 2026. Now, everybody knows that the Rays are only available to play at Steinbrenner Field to the end of this regular season. Now, they're helping out the Yankees by taking care of Fieldhouse 2. And the only reason I believe that would end up happening, in case the Rays would have to make an additional year in Tampa Bay. But everybody knows the beginning part of the baseball season should be fine, because when the summer rains start coming in at the end of May and then June going forward, it's going to make it extremely tough. And this is why you can't, as much as we will love an outdoor venue out here with Tampa Bay, one of two things. One is because of the summer storms. The other thing is, too, because obviously hurricanes that come around. And then the third thing is the players will be scorched on the field, because, it's like the Clearwater Threshers. We love going to those games, but then obviously the games get pushed back as the season progresses later on. So therefore, you're not burning up out there on the field. But the Rays, Dylan, they still can't seem to either strike a deal to get things done. I don't know if they've gone back. I know the city of Tampa have gone back and talked to the Rays and explained to them, listen, here's the situation. Here's the room availability that we have. And yes, there is a lot of logistics that come into place. But why at this point would the Rays want to stay in St. Pete when it sounds like St. Pete is saying, yeah, we want the money, but we don't want the Rays there?
Yeah, the whole thing is an Angel. Is it okay if I curse here real quick?
Of course.
Curse. Okay, it's a clusterfuck, to say the least. That's the best way to put it. I mean, neither side really has wanted to take any blame or any, has wanted to really step up in this whole process. And it's been such a mishandled situation by both parties that nobody knows really what's happening with the Rays. And it's unfortunate, I mean, if you look at some of the numbers and from what I've heard on by the MLB, I mean, apparently the Rays are one of the biggest TV markets in terms of this Tampa Bay area. And, there is, I believe, an interest in baseball here in this area. I mean, Tampa, obviously this area has spring training. We have baseball around it during the springtime regularly with the, 3 or 4 teams we get in this Bay Area. And, there is an interest in wanting to have baseball here in this area. But I mean, the Rays are just one of those teams that, we just have no idea what the ownership group is wanting to do with themselves. And St. Pete is not, added anything to this whole process either. So this whole thing has been mishandled poorly by both parties. And, we'll see what goes on going forward. There's a lot of stuff that can play out here over the next handful of months. But, I mean, the Rays definitely need to figure out something now. I mean, there's been a lot of talks about maybe they're going to sell ownership, that there may be new owners for this team. There's just so much going on with this organization that is making this kind of a very bleak situation given what's going on. So we'll see what's going to happen with the Rays going forward. Hopefully something positive comes. I was so excited when they did announce that they were going to get a new stadium. I think for most of Rays fans, they just wanted to have a new stadium just to have a new stadium, and because they really desperately needed it. So hopefully something gets resolved. I mean, obviously the ideal situation would be playing Tampa, but I mean, if they can at least get a new stadium, that's all I think anybody can really ask for. So we'll see what ends up happening going forward, and hopefully some good comes out of it for the Rays, because it would definitely stink to lose, a MLB team here in this area. Obviously, we'd have spring training, but to not have an MLB team would definitely be disheartening, to say the least.
It would be, because I think it's just if I understand, that a lot of folks said some people don't want it in Tampa. You go, oh, the traffic's already going to be bad. Listen, you can't do anything about traffic. It is what it is.
Yep.
It's building up.
Yep.
There's people that have moved into the area. I mean, from Citrus County past Sarasota County and beyond, everybody has wanted to move down here. And it's one of those things that Florida, originally when it was designed, it wasn't designed as a super highway structure. So therefore, people are just going to have to get used to that. Yes, traffic sucks. Everybody knows this. The only bad part in the area that we live in, there's not a shortcut. Like Philly, I can take so many different avenues and so many different streets to get to my destination, whether I'm going to the Northeast, I'm going out to the burbs, no matter what it is. Here, because we're constantly surrounded by lakes, we don't have those options. Even though they're trying their best to do so, to make it more convenient, it still takes time to build all that stuff up. I mean, we saw out in Pasco County, you have 41, 52, where they expanded a little bit and they needed to. So there's things that are trying to implement to make things better, but I don't think the Rays should go anywhere, in my opinion, because to me, it would make sense for them to just tell St. Pete, listen, thanks, but no thanks. I think we're going to take our services out there to Tampa. And people from Lakeland and Orlando have said that if you put them in Tampa, they would prefer to make the trip down to Tampa than going all the way across through Tampa and over into St. Pete. And I know I also didn't get a chance to speak to you about this as well, because more things have kind of come out from the Bucs over the weekend. Liam Cohen apparently sent a text message to Baker Mayfield and stated that he was coming back to the Bucs, only to turn around in the middle of the night, like the old Baltimore Colts, is to turn around and get signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This whole situation, Dylan, and I know you follow this team a lot. I also know you're an avid Eagles fan, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But I know being a Bucs fan, you guys were season ticket holders for a long period of time. Was this right, the way that Liam Cohen and how this whole thing, came together or ended up falling apart? Or is there still some kind of blame to go back towards the Bucs?
Yeah, this is such and I kind of commented this in a couple days ago about this. I mean, the whole situation is just very awkward, right? And I don't think Liam Cohen meant to make it this way. Like, I think he got a really good offer by the Bucs, and I think he was all intent of signing it. And I think maybe the Jaguars might have saw that he was going to try to go and sign with the Bucs. They might have offered him like a late deal to try to improve on the offer. And I think that's what kind of ended up making his decision there. And, I don't think that Liam Cohen, when you have a head coaching opportunity, I think that it's hard not to pass it up. I think maybe he could have handled it a bit better, but I honestly think it wasn't intentional. I don't think Liam Cohen is that type of person. He seems like he's a very nice person, and it seems like he's someone who is not going to be doing kind of shady kind of back behind your back type of thing, type of deal. So, the whole thing was kind of awkward because there were talks that he was going to come back and he was going to sign this massive deal as being like one of the highest paid coordinators, and then he got the head coaching job. And I mean, at the end of the day, I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he got the gig. I wouldn't say it was a drop ball by the Bucks. I mean, the only other thing you could have done is gave him the head coaching job for the Bucks and fire Todd Bowles, which I mean, obviously could have been a very plausible situation, but they decided that Todd Bowles is the best guy. And honestly, for me, it's just nerve wracking. Now that we have we're going to have to go get another offensive coordinator. We lose Dave Canales. We lose Liam Cohen to a head coaching job. Now you're going to have to go and find another offensive coordinator. It's just, it's going to be interesting to see who they end up going to find and try to bring in, because, this is going to be Baker's third straight offensive coordinator. And that definitely concerns me a little bit. It concerns me with how the team may evolve heading into 2025, and really a year that, in a year that the Bucks need to make some headway. This is a team that's made it to the playoffs the last handful of years, and they didn't even make some headway here in 2025.
And then the other thing as well, and as a guess, one guy's going to be joining here on the line with us as well, but the big thing as well, though, when it comes to Tampa Bay, and I'm just, couple things that drive me absolutely crazy is that you have listen, I don't know what the Glacier family's thinking of, and who am I to say anything, but you have Todd Bowles that now, once again, with Baker Mayfield, cannot pass the divisional round. And it's going to be 50 million questions that are probably not going to be raised. I know Jay Beesworld, who's coming up later on tonight at 6 o'clock, I know he defends Todd Bowles a lot, and a lot of us do for the most part too, but it's got to get to a point in time. And we'll keep asking this, and I guess we'll never get the answer for it because the Bucks believe in it, but is Todd Bowles still the head coach to lead this team going into the next year, into the 2025 season?
Yeah, I mean, he's led the team to the playoffs every year. So, I mean, I'll give him that and such, but there's only so much you can keep saying that until it becomes to a point where, you have to start getting past, the wild card or the divisional round. They lost the wild card in 2022 to the Cowboys, hold on. Let me think about this. Give me 1 second. Yeah, 2022-23 to the Cowboys. They lost won the wild card against the Eagles and lost to Detroit the year prior, and then losing this year to Washington on that field goal. I mean, the substance is going to have to start showing if you're Todd Bowles, and we'll see what ends up happening going forward. I definitely think he will get. Obviously, I think he'll have the shot this year of trying to prove himself more. Hopefully, he some headway, but we'll see what ends up happening going forward. I mean, I think Todd Bowles is a mediocre head coach to me. I think there is a better options out there, but I think the last couple of years have shown there really hasn't been a ton of big options to choose from outside of guys like who have stepped away from the game for a year or two, like a Pete Carroll who just signed with the Raiders. So I don't know. I think Todd Bowles is probably the best option they got right now. It's just, I do think that there is better than Todd Bowles, in my opinion.
I think so as well. And by the way, if you're just joining us, it is 10:46 here on the East Coast, 7:46 out there on the West Coast. You're listening to Martinez Company on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game, along with the Coastal Sports Network. I am Angel Martinez. On the line with me is Dylan Spalding from Auto Racing Digest. And also joining us as well is gas pump guy out there from Fort Myers. GPG, what's happening? What's new?
Not much. Just, going with the flow and trying to figure out when they're going to let Todd Bowles go from Tampa. I agree with Dylan. I think he's a mediocre head coach. I don't think he can cut it. That's just me being an armchair quarterback or armchair coach, whatever you want to call it. But I'm thinking, how much leash are we going to give this guy? Like, we've already lost 2 coordinators. So, I mean, obviously he's doing something good, but I think they should have gave the head coaching job to Liam Cohn personally. When
Yeah.
they said, "Hey, we're gonna give you this," the Bucks should have went back and said, "Hey, don't go with them. Come with us, and you'll be the head coach." But
Well, hey, gas pump guy. I'll just say this. I mean, you say that Todd Bowles is doing something right with his coordinators. Yeah, he's bringing in some good coordinators, but the coordinators are doing something right. So that doesn't always indicate Todd Bowles is doing something right.
Oh yeah. No. I guess that was miss. The way I said it was not the way I meant it. I guess if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I got what you're saying.
But yeah, I mean, we gotta do something here, guys, because don't get me wrong, I like going to the winning our division and stuff, but I want to go back to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's the ultimate goal here, isn't it?
It sure is. It definitely is. By the way, as it's being reported, well, a couple of things here. You have Jay who says, congrats to Duncan Dad and Angel and the Eagles, but then he follows up with an earthquake in New England. He says he's not kidding. And then he follows up with 3.8 off the coast of York, Maine, up there in the greater Northeast region here of the Atlantic side of the United States. So hopefully everybody is fine. I know New York had one I think it was a year prior. So hopefully, I know Jerry from Rhode Island is one of our listeners that call in, or not call in, but at least he sends in text into the show. But I'm hoping he's okay out there because I know he does go on the boat in the morning. So I know it's different on the water than it is on land, but hopefully everything's okay and his family as well. So first time I'm hearing about this morning, but I'm pretty sure the news will be covered in here soon. But yeah, listen, again, no one's bringing out Todd Bowles. It's not like Todd Bowles is some no problem, Dylan. I know no one's writing Todd Bowles as in being bad or indifferent or anything else like that. It's just it's another season with the Bucks that they come up short, can't pass the divisional round. Didn't seem like he had a solid game plan against Commanders. Obviously, the Commanders came to Tampa, took care of business, went to Detroit, took care of business there, and then stopped in Philly, and that's where their season comes to an end. But it really makes you wonder if Todd Bowles next season coming up here for 2025, and you can draft the best you can, but if your coach is not good enough to utilize what he has in the draft, and Bucks did really well as far as picking up newbies here during the regular 2024-25 season, but you got to think something has got to give with the Bucks organization, or they're going to have a coming to Jesus, meeting like they did with Nick Sirianni. Granted, Nick was a lot worse the year before, so it's two different things to make comparisons to. But at one point, they got to speak to Todd and say, "Hey, Todd, what do you think the problem is, or do you feel now that you're going to have a brand new OC?" And the DC obviously had a nod going somewhere else. They lost the assistant GM. He went up to the Bears, if I remember correctly. So now you got to really think: is there something wrong internally with the Bucks organization, or is it one of those things that they have to have just a meeting and say, are we doing things right? Dylan, I'll start with you. I know you have to jump off, but I'll start with you with that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bucks definitely need to reevaluate things, and I think definitely they gotta look at this year as it's got to be a prove year for Todd Bowles. I mean, you thought maybe he can improve on the divisional round win last year. You would think that maybe there could be something that we could keep him potentially, and maybe there'll be something there of substance. But another exit. It was kind of a disappointing win. And honestly, the Bucks didn't deserve to win that game. It didn't deserve to be close in that game, given how they played. And I think overall, the Bucks are going to have to look at this year as being kind of a prove it year for Todd Bowles. If he doesn't make it past the divisional round, it's going to be interesting to kind of see what the team decides to do, and maybe they decide to let him go. So again, some sits in the playoffs is kind of what's changed. So we'll see what ends up happening.
We'll see. Nonetheless, it's always going to be an interesting takedown here in Tampa Bay because you got to figure out what's going to be good going forward for the Bucks. Obviously, they know they got Evans to deal with. They have Godwin to deal with, a couple other contracts they have to take care of. But in order to keep this team young and talented, you've got to figure out what are you going to do with Baker in the long run? What are you going to do during the draft? I mean, that's coming up here shortly. Before we know it, season's going to be over in about 2 weeks. But everything starts to pick up and run with it. The combine will start to happen. So many things that'll come together. But we shall see what ends up happening with the Bucks. So what's on the rest of your slate for today there, Dylan?
I'm actually at school right now, so I will have class, and then I'm going to be working some stuff for USF, and then
I'll be back to working and getting ready for the weekend. So it's gonna be a busy day today.
All right. Well, listen, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for calling in. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys. I'll definitely be listening to the show. Have a good rest of your show, guys.
All right. And then GBG come yesterday, obviously once again, Kansas City, and I'll start with them before I move over to the Eagles, but Kansas City, here we are again with what's been said as controversial calls. There was a late flag, no flag, pickup. Nobody can see it. There were all too many things that we have seen throughout the season where people have put up videos and they've zoomed into it. Dave Portnoy said he's no longer going to tune in. He's NFL out because of calls that went Kansas City's way. We know the storyline is that the NFL will love for Kansas City to be back-to-back champions. The first time and the only time in NFL history, if it happens, first time in a long time as far as back-to-back AFC championships. And that already went through Kansas City. So is it getting to the point where we are now replacing the New England Patriots with the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Pete said it this morning. You know, now the Chiefs are the new Patriots, and I have a hard time with that because, I mean, yes, the Chiefs they're obviously the new Patriots, yes, but at the same time, you know, it's some of the things that Patrick Mahomes does that Tom Brady didn't do. Like, he's not a runner, right? But I find it nerve-wracking and irritating that you can let a guy can go and run towards the out of bounds and stop and then start running again, you know, because he knows if he gets hit, he's going to get the yards. I mean, hey, you're taking advantage of the rule, whatever, more power to you. But at the same time, doesn't that knock the integrity down of the game just a little bit, you know, just like the NFL has to know that all these people are talking about all this stuff, you know, and if it just keeps coming more and more blatant. I mean, last night, Angel, me and you kind of went back and forth a little bit, but we talked mostly during the Eagles game. But it's like the no flag, it's like it's right there in front of your face. Like, hey, we're gonna let this team win, and here you go. This is how we're gonna do it, and we're not gonna care. You know, it's like how you say with the Tampa fans, the way we let the owners know is we show up or we don't show up. At some point, the real football fans, if it keeps going like it's the way it's going, at some point, real football fans or sports fans, period, are going to get fed up with it and be like, okay, I don't want to watch this no more because I know what's going to happen and I know how it's going to go. So you'd think that the NFL would start to hear this stuff or read this stuff and maybe reevaluate what's going on. I mean, it's all conspiracy, whatever, this and that. I mean, I've seen it myself with my own eyes. So, you know, how far-fetched is what we're saying, you know, not true or true, you know?
That's what we're all waiting to see. I mean, I a lot of stuff I don't get is Duncan Dad, by the way, says Saquon got one of those. But the worst thing is to come out and just if we have to revert back to the Patriots here for a minute, the Patriots, it was well known that they were cheating. And it had to come all the way down to when finally they went to Atlanta and alleged, supposed until obviously they found out it was true, was that they would take their cameras and then would record the practices and so on and so forth. And then security finally found a couple guys from Tampa and they tried to say, oh, no, you know, we're just using footage for what we need for a highlight reel or whatever. No, they were recording. So the Patriots finally got exposed for what they were. In 2005, they were known for when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl with them in Jacksonville. Now, granted, I can't put it all on the Patriots either because Donovan and his issues with T.O. and things that had happened, that was a whole different story. Andy Reid was still part of the team back then. But you take a look at what the Patriots have done. And now you insert the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs, which I don't think they will, but if they end up winning, that's 3 of 4 within the last, 5 years that they would be able to pull off. It's pretty much almost the same story as New England. And I don't know how much Roger Goodell has it with the Hunt family that it's like, listen, don't worry about it. I put the colors in the logo. I already put it out there. It was just scripted that you guys are going to be there. No matter, the only way the script would have gone away if Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills would have gone into KC, into Arrowhead Stadium, and actually you had the boat race, basically Kansas City, in order for it not to be a close game. Ended up being 32-29. Flags that should have been thrown weren't thrown. And then ones that were thrown that should have been thrown. It's just a mix mash of mosh, I guess, to put it in best terms. But the flags keep going consistently, as people talked about throughout the season, towards Kansas City. And Kansas City, not for nothing, they're a very much beatable team. They just continue to find ways to win. Now, is that with the help of the refs? Who knows? We saw it yesterday when you have the Bills 2 times where they had the first down and the line ref is straight where the ball is, and he had the placement of the ball directly, but then the line judge on the opposite side is a foot back from the ball. It really has to make you wonder. Yeah, I know every season people talk about the fixes, and I get it. I understand it. It is beyond nerve-wracking, and we hear it all the time. But when you add instances like this, now especially with social media, where people can superimpose things, they can take a look, not inserting stuff. I'm not saying people are changing things. They're just taking game footage. They're making it more where you can see exactly what's going on. It starts to make you wonder, is KC getting favored now to be there come again the following year? Because now they're back there once again. And I will tell you this much. I know Eagles fans will be absolutely beyond pissed off if something like what had happened out in Arizona just a couple years ago against KC happens again come this year, because even Patrick Mahomes himself has said that they're not playing the way they used to play before, but they found the ways to win. And is it that the referees are helping them to win?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I read a statistic that the Chiefs against other opponents, that the penalties are pretty close. I think the Chiefs had like 48 or 47 and opponents had 48. Either way, the Chiefs are a little bit lower than their opponents. But at the same time, I think a lot of it has to do with when the penalty occurs. Like, it seems like the lot of the penalties that like really matter or like really have the game on the line, I think those are like in the fourth quarter. And those are the penalties I have a problem with. The ones that really determine, hey, if they get a first down, they're going to win the game. Like when you're there at the 1 yard line and you get that line before the first down or whatever, and you get that first down, you're going to win the game. You know what I mean? Like when it's a deciding penalty, that's the ones that I really have an issue with. And I think that's how the Chiefs are getting some of their good wins, is those late penalties that just happen to pop up when you least expect it.
Yeah, but the late penalties, it's again, you have to, at one point or another, someone's got to figure out the winning formula against Andy Reid. Now, but I would, as much as I love Andy Reid, because yes, he did a lot of good for the Eagles, set up not only obviously Nick's year, but Dougie P before, and the whole situation out there in Jacksonville too. That makes you wonder: was it a lot of Dougie P's fault for what had happened, or did Trent Baalke add to it for that demise? But you got to think, once this dynasty run is over by Kansas City, and unfortunately it's not going to go away anytime soon, because Andy Reid, I honestly thought after winning his second one, he would walk away and be like, hey, you know what? I'm good. I've got 2. I've got plenty of, regular season wins. I've got a couple, AFC championships under my belt, NFC championships under my belt, some Super Bowl appearances. I thought he would go away. But when you have someone like Patrick Mahomes, who's young, they can find the right targets for Patrick. They can find the right targets for the organization. They can do all the things right. If I'm Andy Reid, I'm probably looking at it too, like, why do I need to walk away from the game? Yes, there is really nothing else left for Andy Reid to prove. He is just a caliber, first-time Hall of Famer head coach that will go in with no problems whatsoever. But it's just, it's the whole dynasty thing. Are people going to get tired of just the Patriots 2.0, which has become the Chiefs? Then you have the Get Up crew with Damian Woody, and he talks about it. And I'll bring up the video here momentarily so you can listen in of what they had mentioned. But listen, it's been said again. Here we are, another Super Bowl season. Once again, KC being in the mix, and I know folks get tired too of seeing Patrick Mahomes all over the place. But when you're winning, when you're successful, when you're doing all the right things, he's going to show up in 50 million commercials, whether people like it or not. It can drive you bananas. We all know this. I mean, I'm pretty sure up in New England, there was probably tons of Tom Brady commercials before he finally went away. But when you're successful, that's what ends up happening. But I want you to listen to Damien Woody when he talks about he was part of a dynasty before and what they feel about the Chiefs coming up here in the Super Bowl.
Listen, I was part of a dynasty. Even I said in the meeting, they go out here and finish the deal. They're the greatest dynasty in the history of the NFL. Yeah. I mean, if they go out here and win a Super Bowl, they've done something even the Patriots dynasty has never done. Win 3 straight Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. Think about that. In professional football, with all of these great quarterbacks, all these great teams, for a team to go out there and possibly to win 3 straight Super Bowls, it's ridiculous. It's unheard of. It's unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been done. It's never been done. And what we're seeing is, look, especially with all the moving parts in today's game, right? The salary cap and all that, it's impossible to do what they're doing, and yet they're doing it.
Everything we say about Bill Belichick, we have to say about Andy Reid. It is as well prepared, as well coached, and as well executing in situational football as a team that we've ever seen.
Listen, I was part of a dynasty.
I can't disagree with that one, especially at the very end what Dan Orlovsky said, because it's absolutely true. You set up your team for success, no matter which way you look at it. You absolutely do. They're either you're set up for success or you're set up for failure. Andy Reid has yet to set up this team for failure. Now, not saying that obviously, again, we're 2 weeks away from it, or less than 2 weeks, I guess 13 days from the Super Bowl. And I wish we were down there this year in New Orleans for Radio Row. We will not be there this year. Hopefully we'll be out there next year in Santa Clara, where going to be home of the 49ers for the Super Bowl, but Super Bowl 60. But Andy Reid has set up this organization for success. And it's, again, I'm not faltering Patrick Mahomes or Kelsey or Andy Reid. They just find ways to pull off a win, and they did it against Buffalo. Again, you have 60 minutes on the gridiron, 60 in the trenches in order to pull off the win. And if you just can't do it, it's like Dan Quinn and crew yesterday with the Commanders. It's the same exact way. They're scratching their heads and trying to figure out what went wrong. And I will say in the very beginning part of the game, I had mentioned earlier on the show, there's a difference between being confident and being cocky. The Commanders were confident coming into Philly, saying, listen, we took care of business against the Bucs. We took down the Detroit Lions, who should have been in the Super Bowl, but they're not. We went to Philly, and it already started. This has been now, let's not forget, we can't stand Dallas. That's first and foremost, everyone. For those who don't know, from Eagles fans from yesteryear, our division, probably the most rivaled, the most hated. Dallas is number 1, Commanders number 2, Giants are number 3. It's just that simple. Giants took, for a couple years, they were in the number 2 spot. No one will ever take away the Dallas spot. They are number 1, the most hated ones in the NFC East, period. But Dan Quinn comes in, and Jane and Daniels said, talk about how loose the team was, how relaxed they were, how much fun they were having. Apparently the OC was talking about over the headset, like, hey, you guys, we're having fun. Let's keep this going, so on and so forth. But then yesterday ended up being a complete different tale when it comes to what we've seen from the Commanders even all season long. It's like they were looking for a street fight, and they found the wrong set of folks in Philly to have the street fight with, because we will knock you back on your ass, whether you like it or not. It's just the way it's going to work. And I'm not talking about, so for people that are listening on the radio or hearing this for the first time, we're not actually talking about street brawl. We're talking about when you come out in the trenches. If you're looking for a fight, you're going to get it. I don't care what team comes in there, but you come to Philly with the attitude that you're just going to manhandle, and we're just a bunch of nobodies. And Saquon isn't a real deal. And Jalen with his knee is not going to be able to pull things off. And Cam Jurgens that wasn't able to come in there and take care of the job. Obviously, he came in the second half. The Commanders came in, to me, with a sense, it went away from confident to cockiness. And then when they fumbled the ball twice, you can kind of see where it really started getting under their skin, because at that point, then came the pushing and shoving. And then came the longest second down in NFL history. So this is where it goes back to just, I don't even know what the word to look for. It goes, it's enough to freaking drive you bananas. It's what it was. And believe me, I absolutely love the things that have been done in Philly, but it's just, there's certain things that will drive me freaking absolutely nuts. And I'm trying to remember here you know what? Let me do it this way here. Sorry, I'm trying to get somebody else here situated. Trevor sent me a message, so I'm trying to do two things at once here as you're on the line here with me. But no, looking at looking to see what I've done with the Eagles, with the Commanders, I just think it truly got to a point where it ended up being it almost, I don't want to say arrogance. The Commanders just came in there too hot. There was a lot that started going wrong for them. And listen, I'm happy. As an Eagles fan, I'm definitely happy. The bigger takeaway was that you had Nick Sirianni, as Pete mentioned this morning too, GBG, is that finally Nick Sirianni stayed out of Nick Sirianni's way. The only thing that still drives me nuts up to this point is that you still have Jalen Hurts. And again, I'm not on the field. I know we watch things from way above, but if there's nothing there and he knew he had a bum knee, just get rid of the ball. And I know you probably caught some of the game yesterday. I'm pretty sure you probably didn't catch all of it, but what was your take of yesterday's game, the NFC Championship game?
Well, like in the beginning of the game, I was thinking, I was like, oh man, this is going to be a pretty good game, pretty competitive game. And then I turned around and the Commanders had two fumbles, and that you could kind of see that kind of changed the dynamic of the game. The defense started pressuring more and started getting to Daniels a lot more, and you could tell that was starting to affect the way he was making his decisions. He still was. I'll give it to him. He was still poised, and it put the facade, if that's the right word. He put the facade that it's not really bothering him, but you could tell that it was kind of in his head a little bit. And then after the Eagles got the ball at the end of the second, about to go into the third, that's when the game really, really changed. They got that fumble recovery, and they went down and they scored. And then they came out in the third quarter and scored again, and that's just when the game got out of hand for me. I thought at that point, it's a done deal now. They're not coming back from that. So I was really happy that the Eagles won. They really fought, and they really showed that they wanted to be there, and that they were really a force to be reckoned with. And I honestly think that if the Bucs and the Eagles were going against each other, I think it would have been a lot better and a lot closer game. But that's just my own bias, I guess.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to, as I'm talking to you again, doing the double duties, because I do have a great guest is about to join me, a long-time Philly advocate as well, now down there doing great stuff in the Miami area, the producer for WQAM 560 out there in Miami. Trevor Harris joins me here on Martinez and Company, who normally joins Pete on the Pete Shepard Show. So this is kind of an honor for me, because I've been trying to do work with Trevor as much as I can, but I know he's always constantly busy. But I do appreciate a couple of minutes. Trevor, first of all, good morning, and man, it's nice to be back in the bowl.
Good morning. It is nice to be back in the bowl. I was rooting very hard for Buffalo, because part of me was like, I go by this. Eagles Bills have been the better storyline. Eagles Chiefs, great. I have to put myself through torture again.
Yeah.
Like I did in 2004 and 2017. So I'm like trying not to do that again to myself, because that was just a miserable time. So I'm excited they're back. Did you have a feeling I was waiting for a shoe to drop, and I didn't feel like it was going to happen. Like it felt like it was going to happen sooner or later, but it didn't happen, which was crazy. I was like ready for that shoe to drop. Like something was going to happen after halftime with like Dan Quinn was going to do some crazy adjustments to do something to mess something up, and the offense was not going to improve itself. So like in the second Washington game, it didn't happen. So I'm glad that didn't happen to me. So How about
No,
that?
I agree with you. I'm the same exact way because I was waiting for something to happen too. Just either if it was going to slow down, and then you had how in the world could you not see? And again, it's different because we're watching from way above the fake punt for a pass for the first down.
Yeah.
And you can see one of the corners that were basically going back and forth. Like he was almost giving it away. Like, hey, here's what's going to happen, Eagles. We're about to put that first down on you. And it wasn't even red. Like everybody was just waiting for the punt to happen. And then it's just a floater that seemed like was in the air for like 15 minutes and then getting the first down. But Dan Quinn, the most out of the NFL season, has gone down for the fourth down. The one thing that had me more worried than anything else, Trevor, and I said it to my wife, was that there was no way the Eagles could have made this a 9-point, a 10-point game going into the fourth because what we've seen from Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I was waiting for something to happen for sure after the second half started, but that fake punt for a pass, it blew my mind that no one saw that one coming.
I had a feel. I was looking at it, I was like, something's gonna happen here. I was like, look at that fake punt, and I was screwed. Like, watched a fake, like I was at the stadium, like, and my neighbor had a knock on my door. Actually, it's like, can you calm it down a little bit? Because they're not football people, and they are football people. They're Dolphin fans, and there's a Browns fan next door. So it's like, I love your passion. Just I don't want to hear it from my walls anyway. So.
And it happens. Listen, one thing, the great thing about living in Philly, I mean, there's nowhere in the world you're going to be you'll never go to your neighbor's house, knock on the door and tell them, can you keep it down? Especially if you're an opposing team, got it alone. If you're a Dallas fan, which it drives me bananas in Philly, the fake Cowboy fans that will show up to the link, but in Philly, you won't be able to get away with that. It was me. I mean, granted, thankfully our house, we're a good distance away from either or from across the street from our neighbors, the one next door. Yeah. I was the same way too in the studio. I was going freaking bananas. And my wife, she knew what was coming because I was going to be fired up. It was that, we've all gone through it. And I referred back to 2017 because we had no idea. Minnesota at the time was still hot back then. So we knew what Minnesota can end up, if the job that could have gotten done. So you knew this was the same kind of implication. The difference was that Jaden Daniels was just on fire basically for the last 12 weeks. And Dan Quinn figured out for 6 weeks in a row to be able to come back. And then if you look back at the divisional game against Detroit, everyone thought, and I know they try to put Jaden Daniels already into the Hall of Fame, and the guy hasn't completed his first season.
They already made the bust, I heard. The guy, whoever does the statues, was ready to build the statue outside of the new RFK Stadium in D.C. already. They were ready to build the statue already, so.
See, to me, that's insane. I mean, I understand. Listen, the kid's a true professional. I will give it to him. Well poised, good in the pocket. I mean, for sure, Jaden Daniels has longevity in the NFL, and the Commanders will get better from it. So will Dan Quinn and the Commanders. But it was so much hype behind it. Like, they're going to run through Philadelphia. Things are going to happen. And believe me, I didn't expect. I know Seth Joyner had mentioned at the end of last week that it wasn't a snowball's chance in hell that the Commanders wound up taking the win. Now, not saying that the Eagles couldn't pull off the win. It's just the way it came across. I'm thinking like Seth was thinking like it's going to be like a 30-point, 40-point difference at the end of the game. But he was right. Seth was definitely right. Longtime Eagle. Everybody loves him. Has a great show, the Seth Joyner Show, on Tuesday nights on YouTube. But in the post-game show and pregame show as well for the Eagles. But again, it was just, to me, there was so much behind Jaden Daniels that you would have thought like the NFC Championship game was already decided by the Commanders and the Chiefs.
It looked like. Okay, ESPN's going to pick against us. Sweet. Fox Sports 1's going to pick against us because Jaden Daniels a moneymaker and he's a new face. He's a new fancy toy. He's like, he's like a new version of like a Ferrari in the NFC. Like Washington's been dead for 20 years. Anyways, I've never when I've grown up, it's like I've never considered Washington as like a rival. It's like they're there, little brother. You'll get your time. And now it's like, well, great. Washington's good again. And I got to give props to Washington because we always underestimate them. They've had awful ownership, new ownership, talent, culture, people is what, as I like to quote the great Magic Johnson and Josh Harris is like, they got it together, honestly. And the thing is, it didn't feel like a one-hit wonder of RG3.
Right.
I feel like this is sustainable. And it's going to be, the division's going to be like between three quarterbacks anyways, between Hurts, Jaden Daniels. I'll throw Dak Prescott in there because I know they're at the announce a new head coach anyway, sooner or later. So just get ready. So I think the NFC East is thriving, as I like to say.
I think so as well. And obviously other than Dallas just keeps going backwards. I don't understand that hire too, which I think is a desperate move. Schottenheimer, I understand you're the son of, but it really so they went after Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore decided to say, you know what, I'm just staying put. But now learning this morning, Kellen Moore is going to be talking with New Orleans Saints for that position. But it's a head scratcher when it comes down to Dallas.
What I was reading in the tea leaves of what I've had to listen to 105.3 The Fan. I want to know what was the thing with Mike McCarthy was. There was tension between Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore anyways. It was like Kellen Moore wanted autonomy of the offense. Mike McCarthy said, no, get the bleep out of here. This is my team and my offense, so you're not going to get any of it. There was tension from there. There was tension between Joe Philbin and Kellen Moore and Dak Prescott, and it was pretty crazy. So I personally think Mike McCarthy will be the next head coach for your New Orleans Saints anyways. I want Kellen Moore to stay for a year. I want to see what Jalen Hurts could do with an OC that's sustainable for another year, not go for another head coaching job anyways. So that's what I want to see anyways. But because New Orleans is desperate, they need a head coach. And there's also they're in cap hell because of Mickey Loomis. So I think Mike McCarthy is the only choice there. So
I think so. Yeah, I think so too. Well, you figured because I thought, first of all, I thought it was kind of a slap in the face too by the Cowboys not allowing Mike McCarthy to interview with the Chicago Bears.
Oh,
and then wait until his contractual obligation with the team was done, but no, they wait until the 13th, basically saying, no, we're just going to screw you even more.
No, it was actually Mike McCarthy actually told it. I was like, I don't want this anymore. That's why. If you listen to what everything's gone down, Mike McCarthy's like, I'm good. I'm not going to renew with you guys anyways. It's all about years and money and stuff. That's the thing. I want to know. I mean, and I understand like Ben Johnson. I know he was on a radar for a couple other teams, and then he comes into Chicago, wants to be Dan Campbell-esque with his speech. There's only one Dan Campbell. Like, be you. Don't worry about trying to be somebody else. Don't be your predecessor. You were there, successful team. We all know we saw this right back in 2017. Eagles win. What happens? Everybody gets dismantled, and now we got to start from scratch all over again. Yep.
It didn't help that 2018 was followed by the hangover of 2017. That was a whole different story. And then obviously Dougie P, who's gone the year afterwards, comes down to Jacksonville, which still makes you wonder too, Trevor. And I'm pretty sure you probably feel a little bit like this as well. Is Trent Baalke a lot of the fault as well for Dougie P not being as successful as he could have been in Jacksonville?
Can I put both at fault? I think both people are at fault because when you look at Doug Peterson, he pretty much brought almost the whole same offensive staff he had in Philly to Jacksonville.
Right.
Trent Baalke, I think I've always said I never liked Trent Baalke from the get-go. And I know he hired Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco. Harbaugh was a winner. He made San Francisco be relevant for the first time in 12 years there. And I think Trent Baalke has an ego that he wants to make sure I get the credit, like Jerry Jones-esque. And I think he had that problem again when Doug Peterson came over and took over. And it was like Doug Peterson it was all credit, but not Trent Baalke. I'm glad that guy is out of the league. I think he should have been fired years ago anyways. And how Jacksonville is just a dumpster fire is not surprising at all. And when you look at it, it's like the most dysfunctional franchise in the state of Florida towards pro football anyways. So that's what I go by. So I want to see what Liam Cohen does, because I feel like it's just like there's just circling the wagon again with like new hot OC. Let's see what he could do with Trevor Lawrence as we spin the wheel of suck, I like to call it.
No, it's true. Although GBG, who's still on the line with us, I'm pretty sure he was not happy that Liam Coleman decided to hightail it out to Jacksonville. Because again, they have to find yet another offensive coordinator out there in Tampa Bay, which is kind of almost, if you look at Miami, the same way with Tyreek Hill situation. I don't know if there's been any different talks or any different things that have happened, but is there any new news from Tyreek Hill?
Everyone's been quiet down here. It's the championship weekend. No one on the Dolphins is saying anything stupid recently right now. So I like to say it's a good time anyways. It's also a bad time because we have no cuts to play. So I kind of need Tyreek Hill to say something stupid during media week anyways. So that's what I'm going by.
Which it could happen. Well, if not him, it's going to be somewhere in between. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers. He's just going to come out of his shell, come out and say something. And so it's either going to be the middle part of the week, or it's going to be before the Pro Bowl, or it'll be during the week of the Super Bowl when he decides he wants to come out and just say nothing, but just to say something.
I think it's between, I always say the people who need to say something that really nothing to say, it's between Aaron Rodgers and Michael Parsons. Those two, you're the leading candidates, everyone, I like to say. So I will put my money at plus 250 for Michael Parsons to say something stupid about the Super Bowl anyways. Then him. Then I'll actually throw in Deebo Samuel as well. So I know he likes to say a lot of things about the NFC title game as well. So since the 49ers were not there.
That's right. And you bring up a point here with Deebo Samuel and the 49ers, because we saw the holdouts this year. And every single year when we see with teams and guys who want to hold out, it's always the same thing. I'm going to hold out for more money. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then the team fails to make it to the postseason. Mm-hmm. And it's not the same way with the 49ers. Which then with Kyle Shanahan last year when we were at Radio Row, listening to him at the podium, like there wasn't that confidence, Trevor. Like I didn't feel like Kyle Shanahan went in there like I have a game plan against Kansas City. It was almost like I watched the gameplay from Madden 2023, and I think I found a way to maybe potentially beat him.
I think it also applies to Mike McDaniel as well. I think those two are, I know they're part of the same tree. I'm going to run my 3 plays, a post route, a screen pass, and maybe an end route, and see if I can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's what I always go by between Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel anyway. So that's how I view it. I just want to say, because you figured out Brock Purdy, where a lot of people are starting to think that, okay, so you came in like a genie in a bottle, mystery irrelevant, but now this year you didn't prove much and it became basically a major backward step. Is Brock Purdy still the one to lead the 49ers into the 2025 season? I think he's the only choice anyways. When you look at the 49ers, I know they got to give him a contract. I think they're going to franchise him anyways, and they're going to figure out the contract from there. When you look at quarterbacks, it's hard to find one these days unless you want to go to the college ranks anyways. Like unless Kyle Shanahan wants to go back to Iowa State and go get Anthony Beck's son Rocco, and then he can bring the experience again. I have no hate towards Brock Purdy. He runs the offense well for Kyle Shanahan. When you look at, he's not a great quarterback, but he gets the job done anyway. So that's why I always consider he's a good game manager. He's like a bunch of weapons. He's almost like Jalen Hurts, but he can throw the ball down, and that's how I view him as well. That's how I view Brock Purdy. It's also anyone could run that 49er offense. Doesn't matter if it's Dante Culpepper, who is a torn ACL, or Jeff Garcia, or Brock Purdy. Anyone could run that offense and look like $1 million anyways. So yeah, it's true. The other thing I want to get into before we get back to the Eagles, because Nick Foles, I think the surprise appearance out there on the podium to hand off the NFC Championship trophy, that was really cool to see. But Pete Carroll, Raiders, interesting to see that, and I know we heard 50 million. You talked about it as well. The 50 million rumors between, it was going to be Shador, Dion combo out with the Raiders. Then we heard that same combo out with Dallas. And then all of a sudden, the Raiders out of nowhere decides, hey, Pete, just wondering, are you still young enough to come back to the NFL? And can you help us out? Because you're going to go against the same division rivals that you used to coach for. I actually like him in the Vegas hire. I know some people hate it. I actually like the hire because when you look at the Raider organization, I felt like there's no stability at head coach. They've always said like, oh, we'll just go for the hot name like every time. It doesn't matter if whoever it is. I'm really intrigued because I want to see what Pete Carroll could do to a Raider franchise that has been pretty much irrelevant since 2002 anyways. Right. And I want to see him do well. And it's also, he's going against Jim Harbaugh, which I'm excited for. Pete Carroll versus Jim Harbaugh. You can't go wrong with that. Pete Carroll versus Sean Payton. I'm down for that. Pete Carroll versus Andy Reid. You literally have every game worth between KC and everybody. It's going to be like the late 425 game on CBS or the 405 game. So I'm excited for that. It's also good for the Raiders because you have someone to like put a face on, like, hey, we have a coach, and I want to see what they can do now. I just want to see what they do. I kind of want Cam Ward to go to Vegas because I think him and Cam Ward and Pete Carroll will be good tutelage. Like Pete Carroll showed him how to be a quarterback and stuff in the NFL. So I'm excited for that hire. And I know some people hate it, but I like the hire. I want to see what he can do with the staff. And there's a buzz in Vegas, and it's not for the Golden Knights, it's for the Raiders, I like to say. So I'm excited for the hire, and it's good for it's good for the AFC West, I like to say. Yeah, I don't think I have a problem either with Pete Carroll coming back. I'm actually surprised that he did, because I know when he was done with Seattle, it felt like, truthfully, he was just done with the NFL. Yeah, that's what it seemed like. He was also teaching a class at USC, which I was like, okay, I want to look at the cliff notes for this show. Is his class he's teaching, and I want to see what he's teaching and stuff. So that's how I viewed it. So all I know is he's still going to teach a class, and then I want to end on this syllabus and stuff, see what I'm going to learn in that class. That's true. No, it's a good point, but
I'm looking forward to it for sure for Pete Carroll. And who knows the additions he's going to end up making here during the offseason. And yeah, it'd be nice to see Cam Ward go over there because I think if you're going to land with a good head coach, I think Pete Carroll can definitely do. I mean, he did wonders for Russell Wilson before Russell Wilson kind of screwed himself in the foot. But I mean, you got to, you end up doing well there. I mean, BJ Daniels, I understand he was a backup quarterback for Seattle, and he ended up doing good for BJ Daniels as well back in the day here locally from USF. But I want to see what's going on with that one. And guess what, guy? I know you've been kind of following the story as well when it comes down there to the Raiders. What do you think about Pete Carroll coming back to the NFL?
I agree with you guys. I think it's a good chance for him to see what he's still got, and if he can get Cam Ward to go over there, I also think that he'll be good and help develop him. That's pretty good hire by the Raiders and Tom Brady. I'm sure he had a lot to do with it to get Pete in there, and so I'm interested to see on how it progressed, and it's definitely going to be intriguing to watch as the next season and off season roll around and see what they do in the draft and stuff. So yeah, I think it's pretty good hire and see how it goes.
I think the other thing too, Trevor, when it becomes just again interesting with the Raiders, with Seattle, because again, you got to think about, what's going to happen out there. Is Seattle, I mean, they still believe in Geno Smith, supposedly from what we know at the end of the season, they keep going back to no, Geno's our guy. But Seattle's going to have to do something to improve, especially now that you're going to have the Raiders basically in your back door and at your heels coming after you. So I would think at this point, is Geno Smith, is he still at least valuable enough to the Seahawks?
He is valuable to the Seahawks because Sam Howell's the worst thing ever. And plus, they're in the NFC West. The Seahawks, it's a winnable division. Like this year was a winnable division because the Niners were bad. The Rams were shaky, but they got it together. And the Cardinals were just like, they were frisky the whole time. I think when you look at that division, I think it's anyone's division. I know the Niners will be back with health and stuff. It's really a fight between LA and Arizona, I feel. So, plus Arizona looked really good, healthy this year with Kyler Murray starting right out the gate. So I will say that it was exciting. So, and plus, I think it'll be fun for the Pete Carroll because he's in the AFC West. Like, he's going to play the Seahawks maybe once a year, and I think the returns will be really entertaining. I think he'll get a standing go for real. So
I think so as well. And I know it's, for those who are listening in, obviously it's two different divisions, but it's just because I make the reference back to Seattle nonetheless. But it is 11:30 here on the East Coast, 8:30 out there on the West Coast. You're listening to Martinez Company here on the Coastal Sports Network, brought to you by Sports Radio 102.9 The Game. Trevor Harris joining me from WQAM 560 in Miami, longtime Northeast Philly Eagles fan. And it was an interesting story how he became an Eagles fan, which is even better because I think his family didn't disown him altogether, which is always a good thing. But it was just interesting. And for those who have never heard Trevor before, Trevor, I know you said the story before with the Pete Shepard Show, but let everybody know exactly how you became an Eagles fan.
So growing up in Connecticut, you have two Foxes and two CBS. So like in parts of Connecticut, especially in New Haven, Southern Connecticut, you have a Connecticut Fox and you have a Connecticut CBS. So you get the New York stations as well. And back then, and there's, remember when there's a 75-mile radius, if there's a home game, for example, if the Jets were playing at 1 and the Giants were playing until like maybe like a 4:25 or anything else, the Fox New York would be blacked out. So Fox Connecticut will always air a game. And it would always be like the Packers, the Vikings, the Eagles, the Cowboys, and like any good number one game all the time. Plus, the Eagles will always put the Giants twice a year. I liked McNabb growing up. He was different. I thought he was more entertaining than Kerry Collins growing up when he was with the Giants. And plus, the Eagles looked cool. Like when you had Hugh Douglas just doing his thing, you had Deuce Staley, you had James, you had like Todd Pinkston. It was just a fun team to watch, and I liked that. And the colors were cool anyways, the midnight green and stuff. And the funny thing is, my uncle is a diehard New York Giants fan. He was at the Miracle at the Meadowlands when Herman Edwards when Larry Zonka fumbled the ball. And Herm Edwards picked up and ran for the touchdown. And plus, he went to school at Villanova, so he's been to the vet and stuff. So he saw the funniest story ever when they played the Patriots in the 70s. The Eagles brought out Paul Revere and his horse, and Paul Revere's horse took a dump on the 50-yard line. The Eagles fan cheered. That is a true story that he's told me. So,
no, listen, I'm hoping there's another celebration down at Broad Street, which I'm really hoping for. And I know as the game, the week continues, we'll get into a little bit more, with the matchups between Kansas City and Philadelphia. But this is now an opportunity of folks. And when I lived in Philly, it was funny because I was doing Uber Lyft along my full-time job. And there's so many people that came in from Florida just for that day. And thankfully they moved it from Tuesday to that Thursday because one, it was bitterly cold on Tuesday and there was the rain that followed that led into Wednesday. So finally Thursday, we got things kicked off. I didn't go to work all week long. I told my boss, sorry, I work here. I've been here, for over 5 years straight without taking a day off. That week, I took it off and I celebrated with everybody. But Eagles pull it off again. Mm-hmm. Will you go back up to Philly, or are you staying home and celebrating?
So my parents are from Connecticut. My mom's from Connecticut originally, so I didn't go up last time, and I was in Ohio because I was going to Phoenix the next day for the weekend with my uncle. I was seeing my uncle and went to the Flyer game and went to Vegas the next day. I always like watching on TV. I like to be in warm weather. So I like to say, hey, it's awesome. I will not. I've been to one parade. It was the Cubs in 2016, actually. So I would say that was kind of my parade cherry I popped. And I think that's good enough. I just like, oh, cool. I can watch it from my TV while everyone's cold. I'm just going to be warm down here anyways. That's how I view it. So I'm a softie. I was like, I grew up in cold weather. Went to college in cold weather. I just want to be warm for once, not be miserably cold. So
no, listen. I'm right there with you because I'm the same exact way. I would love, in a sense, would I love to be back home just celebrate with everybody? Sure. Do I really feel like freezing all over again? No. Do I feel like going through the chaos of what goes on, in Philly every once in a while? No, I don't feel like doing it either. But the same way, there was a lot of people that it's just funny because I know there's a media outlet somewhere. They were just dying to report. Look, fire across Philadelphia. Like, it doesn't happen. Everyone is orderly because everybody wants to just go out to the streets and celebrate. And if you're a Frank and Cotman, like Duncan Dad was, it's the same way. You just go out and you party with the city all week long. That's just the way it was. And I even mentioned not too long ago, it was the first time when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl and actually won. Honest to God, Trevor, usually I would stop. I lived in South Philly down by 4th and Snyder. I would always stop by right on Delaware Avenue at the Wawa before I started making my way up to Northeast Philly. If I was working up there over the weekend or during the week, unless they put me down in Center City. Yeah. But it was the first time ever I went to Wawa without me. Like, I would say good morning to everybody all the time. Yeah. And I usually used to hear all the time, what's so fucking good about it? Yeah. It was the first time I walked in and said good morning, and someone turned around and said good morning, champ. And I swore I had an out-of-body experience. Like, is this Philly? Is this true?
I feel you. You won't. I feel like the thing is you won't get that in many places because New York is like you have 3 teams, but really like no one really is a Jet or Giant fan unless you're from that area. Yeah, you probably will get it in Boston. Probably, you'll get it in Chicago because it's Chicago. They're desperate for good football. And you probably get Detroit because they're desperate for good football. It all depends on the market. Like when LA won the Super Bowl, none of the LA locals gave a bleep about it because most people, like, LA lost football for 20 years. My dad's from LA. He said this to me. When the LA Rams left for St. Louis, they were dead to him. And they came back as like, they're still dead to me. I don't care about them anyways because it's a Laker town and a Dodger town. Yeah. That's how I view it. Like when you look at certain teams, like certain cities, like would people in Miami care? They may, but it's like, to me, it's like, you really don't because most Dolphin fans live up north anyways because no one wanted to be a Jet fan anyways. The ones down here, they don't care anyways. So like Tampa, there's a hardcore fan base that's locally there, but it's like, I think, will they party on the streets? They may do, but it's like they will party more for the Lightning than the Buccaneers. That's how I see it. So
yeah, and now well, speaking of one thing, I honestly, Tampa, I'm still trying to figure you guys out. Gasparilla being one of the bigger parties that you can have. It's basically like a Mardi Gras style, but in Tampa and warmer temperatures. I don't get how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like you guys are done for the season. They have nothing else better to do but to go out there and golf. You don't show up at Gasparilla. Really? It doesn't make any, neither do the Rays. So let me put them on in the same boat too, because the Rays don't show up. That is if you've never had, right. But if you would have had, this is a time for you to shine and be like, oh, by the way, here we are. If you guys haven't heard of us, we play over there at Raymond James Stadium. You guys might want to come check us out at $1 Place. Nothing. It's like, I don't understand it. I really don't. By the way, let me get a couple comments here as Joe from 24 minutes ago. Joe says, Philly stood tall and lived up to the task. True, Joe. And thank you for tuning in. We do appreciate it. But yeah, absolutely. Joey B says, good morning, Angel. Good morning, Trevor B. Good to see you, or happy to see you made your bed and cleaned up.
It's always made when I have to do media appearances. Don't worry. It's even made for the podcast as well at times. So
It's absolutely true. And as you said, it always comes back to Wawa, Joey B. You know how the show works. It always comes back to Wawa. It's a well-loved staple. It's funny to hear people. The best thing is to hear people when they go into Wawa, it's like, oh, is it headquartered here in Florida? Nope, up there in the Delaware Valley. It will always be a staple. And the two gentlemen that started Wawa, by the way, who were good friends, started, for those who don't know the history of Wawa, started at their house, at the garage, and the women said, if you guys don't find a place to do something with this business, you're going to stop it. Because so where they live out towards Chester County, there was back in the day, like there was nothing out there. So if you had to get milk, ham, eggs, I mean, you were literally driving into the city in order to do so. So they would do the task by bringing it back to her house, and they were selling it from inside their house. And the wives were like, listen, this is cute. It's a great business. Now you got to move to the garage. And then ended up blowing up to where at this point, the town where they're at right now has been nicknamed Wawa, PA. And the garage is now part of the museum for Wawa.
that's crazy. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
more
so
more Wawas. I know they're starting expanding out in the Midwest, thankfully. So that's my buddies are excited for that, especially in Illinois. So good job by that.
Yeah, well, now there's the one or two down here in Florida where they've made the drive-through only version of the Wawa.
I've seen those before. If they go to Texas next, it's gonna be a money maker for them. If they go to Texas, they're good to go. So
yeah, definitely. Because you figured, like, I'm trying to think who else. So down here, obviously, you're gonna go against
7-Eleven.
Yep, 7-Eleven, Racetrack. But there was the one that was back in Pennsylvania, but you had to go up towards
Mobile Exxon, the Tiger Mart, those are still around. Like,
Yeah.
I have a mobile like right near me, and I go to Chevron the most anyway. So I'm a Chevron guy. I'm just a West Coast guy who grew up on the East Coast anyway. So like Chevron, like, I'll go there anyways. Go to the Chevron Mart any day of the way. So
Yeah, Chevron's not bad. Philly, you didn't have them as much. If you did, you only had the gas pumps. You didn't actually have the store because they had the little booths, as a lot of folks don't know. And if you're in Jersey, you're screwed. You're not pumping your own gas. There's guys that are standing out there at the booths and tell you, top you off, hun. But
they got mad at me one time when I was like, I put my own gas. Like, dude, I know how to pump my gas. I'm from, like, look at my place. I was like, oh, well, I still got to pump it. I was like, no, you don't. You know, you can get arrested for that. I was like, this is just a job, just to have a job anyway. So that's all.
Yeah, no kidding. Joe LaRussa, by the way, says Pete Mahomes always come through. He reminds me of a young Tom Brady. Mahomes is a stud and won't be surprised if he breaks Brady's record for of 7 Super Bowl wins in the next 10 years. Joe, I will partly agree because that's where Kansas City and Andy Reid wants to go, as I mentioned earlier on, just before Trevor jumped on. I think it's coming down to Andy Reid really, really feels that he can accomplish what Bill Belichick did. It's going to be a long road to get there. I also don't believe that Travis Kelce is going to be around for that long because he's had a major slowdown in his career this year. And it's got nothing to do with it. I know a lot of people try to say, well, if he wasn't in love with Taylor Swift, it'd be a whole different story. I don't think that's the case.
I don't think it's the case. I think he's been in the league since 2013. That's a lot of miles anyways. That's high mileage Ferrari right there anyways. It's like he's that 80s Ferrari that was really good.
Yep.
Now it's like it's starting to break down. You have to take it to the service area all the time anyways. So.
That's a good way to put it.
That's how I look at tight ends. They're like, it's an 80s or 90s sports car anyways. That's how I view it. And like Jerry Rice is that hyper speed, like 2000 sports car that we never saw before in the 80s. So that's how I view it.
That is true. And it's long as I've ever seen Travis's hair, and for the longest, because it's always like buzz cut. That's as long as ever, unless he's planning on doing some movie with Taylor Swift or something else. I have no idea. But listen, I know you have to run because you have to get to work soon, Trevor. But please let everyone know where you can listen to the Upper Bowl podcast, especially where they can follow you on the social medias.
Upper Bowl podcast. You can follow it on You can listen to it on Spotify, Instagram, iTunes. You can listen to the whole archive of it from episode 1 to episode 333 we're up to right now. So there's some OG episodes on there, which my old co-host Derek Leaf and I would talk about almost everything. Then it was myself, Griffin, and Eric Bly, and my other buddy Jordan. Then it was like a rotation after that, my buddy Clyde. And Duncan Dad's been jumping on for this year anyways. I just want to say, like, hey, there's a door open. I don't like doing these by myself all the time because it's like, you're just trying to figure out stuff to talk about. It's always great to have someone to talk with. Duncan Dad is always on when he jumps on all the time. We always bring some knowledge. He brings a perspective that's been missing a lot in the sports industry. Like a lot of people just like want to say like funny takes and stuff. Like I'd like to have a take and like let's be honest about it. Like I always feel the Eagle fan has gone a little too soft these days, anyways, because the new Eagle fans like, oh, we've seen Super Bowls, and like a lot of those they're trying to push out us old Eagle fans and stuff, and I just don't like that, anyways. So we give you a perspective that's been missing in sports radio or just the podcast industry in general. So we try to be cool. Like I don't like to compare ourselves to any show. We try to be cool, like Shannon RJ in Dallas, anyways. We bring the takes and bring the fun stuff, anyways. So.
No, but that's just it. You got to have fun. That's a big thing. If you don't have fun, because everybody, I always mention all the time, you can talk about X's and O's all day long. That's what the NFL networks, the ESPNs of the world are for. This is where you get to enjoy and you bring a different perspective to the game. Yeah, and we bring on guests when we do. It's like we've had Angel Martinez on, who was probably my favorite guest I've ever had on. Who's like, that's like I always have a whiteboard. I had a whiteboard and now it's a doc now. Like guests I want to have on. When Angelo's book came out, I was like, all right, I'm going to throw an invite and see if he can come on. And now I was like, I finally get the nail. I was like, yeah, Angelo's down to go on. I was like, oh my Lord, it's probably my favorite accomplishment is like having Angelo Cataldi on the Upper Bowl podcast, which I had him last year during the collapse of the Eagles. So that was probably my favorite during the only time it was a bad circumstance for the Eagles. It was probably the most fun I ever had. I actually sped through a book for the first time in maybe 15 years. He's a lot of fun to talk to. I've run into so many times, obviously, because I lived in Philly, so I was, right there at the helm. But it was nice because he would always take a moment to stop to talk, even as crazy busy as he is. But now that he's retired, I'm pretty sure it's a lot better because then at least he can be in his element versus being rushed and pushed all the time. But yeah, it's always fun. But listen, Trevor, thank you so much for joining me. As always, an open invite whenever you want to come back. I always appreciate the time. Definitely take care. Follow Upper Bowl Podcast on Upper Bowl Podcast Twitter and check it out on Facebook and stuff and follow everything. We do a few clips here and there because I run everything because I'm the producer, the editor, social media manager. So it's a one-man band. I like to call it. It's a pop mom pop podcast, but we keep it cool anyways. So take care. Be well. I'm out. All right, Trevor. Thanks a lot. There's Trevor again from 560 WQAM out here in Miami, of course, south of us, because we are here along with Gas Pump Guy. He's even further than Gas Pump Guy out there in Fort Myers because he's on the East Coast down there towards Miami Gardens. So thanks for Trevor for jumping in. I do appreciate Gas Pump Guy, of course, still hanging out with me. We've got some about 10 minutes or so here left on the program. Thanks to Joe for your comment for hanging around because he also mentions, Joey B, I'll get to yours in a second. Joe says, I agree, and the ownership of the Chiefs is and will be committed and having to get quality players. It's true, Joe. Absolutely true. I cannot argue that point. Listen, the Chiefs are in it for the long haul. And when you have a young ownership group, that's where the Chiefs, they want to, if they can, and Patrick Mahomes, thankfully, he is young. He will get close to Tom Brady. I don't know if he'll be able to get as many, and who knows? He may be able to do what Tom Brady couldn't do. And Tom Brady has mentioned it before as well, but it's tough to be able to win 7, yet alone to make 10 Super Bowl appearances. But to win 7, it can because he is young. As long as Andy Reid stays healthy, of course, Kansas City can also turn around and try and do the same thing. The only difference is that Andy Reid, just like Belichick, will be able to do it with one team. Belichick, of course, also has 7 Super Bowls, but the 6th one the 7th one he had, I should say, was when he was with the Giants. So, it's a whole different story. But I think, everybody knows right now the big talk of the town is going to be Kansas City, no matter which way you look at it. Right now, they're looking to run it back. They're looking to do a dynasty. It's just so much of the momentum going Kansas City's way. And I mentioned it earlier on during the broadcast was that when I was there at Radio Row last year, just listening to you really, honest to God, you couldn't hate them. When you listen to them, the way they spoke during the different pressers, it's the confidence. There was zero cockiness. And that's what I was expecting. I went there, we're like, all right, come, Media Monday. It's going to be one of those things like we're the best, blah, blah. Nope. Every question that was asked, whether it was to Andy Reid, whether it was to Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, I don't care who came up to the podium. It was all basically the same message. We're here. We're not worried about what we did last year. Yes, we're the defending champs. That's where we're back here again. But we're just going to take care of business. And I'm pretty sure it's not going to be any different. The only difference was last year compared to any other Super Bowl was that they kept the teams 25 miles out from Vegas. Because everybody knows you go to Vegas and the whole theory is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, except for now with social media, and no longer stays in Vegas. It gets spread out everywhere. So they wanted to make sure they kept the teams focused and they kept them out there after the Super Bowl was all said and done. Then they could win, party, did what they wanted to do, and that's what everybody enjoyed. But Kansas City is on a mission once again. The Eagles as well. Nick Sirianni, the one thing that I appreciated, and guess what, guy, I know I haven't mentioned this as well, but the one thing, and listen, if anybody knows me, I love my birds. I've been a fan since the early 70s, as long as I can remember. The big thing is that you turn around and you finally admit the wrong of what happened last season. And A.J. Brown even mentioned it when Fox 29 had interviewed him on the field, was like, yes, do we know we screwed up last year? Of course we do. Is it in the back of our mind? Yes, the past is a past, but it's always on the back of your mind. That's what was pissed me off throughout the entire season was just come out and let everybody know that last year was a complete disaster and that this year, after it was all said and done, and even the slow starts, CBG, because we text back and forth between the Eagles and the Bucs game. The slow starts was what I thought, Trevor probably thought, a lot of people end up thinking, but just to hear Nick Sirianni to finally admit that, yes, we were trying to get that monkey off our back. We were trying to move forward, and this was a way to redeem what happened last year. It's that confidence now that I feel that the Eagles can take care of business 2 weeks from now. But there's going to be a lot of talk about it. Before I get back to you, GBG, Joe says, Pete, even though I know Pete Shepard's not here, but Pete, we have a top NFL coach leading our program here, and we've won 3 St. John's Prep High School Super Bowls in 7 years. Joe, I will let Pete know, but yes, you guys got Mike Vrabel out there in New England. Mike Vrabel was a go-to destination for a lot of teams, and I think New England finally with Robert Kraft, Joe, was that Robert, I'm quite sure it was hard as an owner to admit that, boy, did you do the wrong thing for Patriots fans. And listen, and we all understand it and we get it, Joe, because even when I lived in New England from 85 to 88, it was tough to see what went on. And they went, they played against the Bears. That was one of the last times ever that New England stunk when they played the Bears when I was up there. But it was one of those things, Joe, that now you have Mike Vrabel. He's made some good additions. Josh Daniels is back in the house with New England. And it was tough. I couldn't imagine as an owner at all what it would be like that you have to come in front of fan base and in front of the world and say, I made a huge mistake, and thinking that Gerard Mayo was our guy when Belichick was just at the end of his term in New England. But all eyes will be on Mike Vrabel for next season. And am I expecting from Mike Vrabel to have a Commander season-esque like the way the Commanders did this season? No. There's going to be some learning curves. There's going to be things, there's going to be some improvements. But I will definitely say there'll be more than 2, 3, 4 wins for sure, because Vrabel is going in there. Vrabel's going in like Dan Campbell. He knows what he has to do to repair from the basement up to the front offices. Vrabel's got a big, big task in front of him. But Robert Kraft did right with the fans. The same way with Jeffrey Lurie when he turned things around with Nick Sirianni. And believe me, that coming to Jesus, whatever you want to call the situation when it came between Jeffrey Lurie and obviously Howie and Nick Sirianni, basically he was told, here's the deal. Either we're going to do this right, and if you feel your coordinators were not the right fit, here's what's going to happen. We got to turn around and fix this ship, or if not, you're done at the end of the season. And I don't know how many times throughout the season I said fire Sirianni because of just the stuff that wasn't right, but he finally got out of his own way in the NFC Championship game, and now they're back. So is Sirianni at Mike Vrabel's level? Probably not, because you're talking about 2 different coaches. But is Vrabel in the same helm as Sirianni? Yeah, you got to take a franchise that was just separated a couple years ago from winning a Super Bowl and turning around and telling the fan base, we are here, New England, and we are here to get back to where we were before. And if Vrabel does it in his first year, you know what? Hats off to him. But everybody's going to have all their eyes on New England for sure, because they want New England to go back to being what they were before. It's not easy to win Super Bowls. It's also not easy to get back there again and try and do so. So, Joe, I'm with you. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with Mike Vrabel, New England Patriots. I'm just I'm thankful that an owner owns up to his mistakes because that is the hardest thing ever to do. But GBG, I know you've been patiently on the line there. And again, we're 13 days away, separated from the Super Bowl. Kansas City ended up taking care of business. But the big thing, I know I haven't got a chance to ask you about this, was just the Commanders. Everybody thought in actuality, and I know they put Jaden Daniels on this huge pedestal. And Joe, I'll get to your comment here in a second, but they put him on this huge pedestal that they were just going to come in and basically take care of business. And when you look what they did to Detroit, it would have almost been the same way. But at the end of the day, the Commanders to you, come next year, are they going to be right back where they were this past season?
I mean, I don't see why not. I think the loss to the Eagles really showed them maybe where they're vulnerable or what they are lacking still. Maybe clean up the line a little bit, the offensive line a little bit, stack it up a little bit more, get some tackles, get a center or something, just to help fortify a little bit. But I don't see why they can't be right back in the mix again next year. I mean, Jaden Daniels supposedly is what they say you can only go up. But I mean, after this phenomenal season that he had as a rookie this year, I think he's going to have a lot of pressure on him. So if he doesn't let the pressure get to him, I think the Commanders will be all right. But if he lets the pressure get to him and start getting in his head and start second guessing things, I think it could be a problem. But he seems like he's got a good poise to him, and he doesn't let things bother him as much. So he seems like he has a cool head. So I don't see why they can't be right back in the mix again next year and maybe even go to the playoffs again. It's the sky's the limits. If he can keep on and doing good and practicing and excuse me, and have his head in the right mind space, I think he'll be really good next year.
I think so as well. And by the way, Joe makes a comment where Joe said, I mentioned Joe, I would get back to him for a second. He said if Vrabel wins 3 to 4 games, he will be gone too. Kraft is getting older and older, and he wants another 2 to 3 Super Bowls. Joe, I don't think if Vrabel, I don't believe, this is probably the only thing that I will say I will agree to disagree, is that I don't think if Vrabel, first of all, I believe New England will win more than 4 games. If not, at least I would say 7 games. You have Drake May, which is a really good quarterback, and now you have the head coach to make Drake May shine. But I don't think if Vrabel wins 3 to 4 games, which again, I don't see that many losses for New England come next season, I don't believe that Robert Kraft is going to let him go because they know that he has to really come in and basically try to clean this organization up as much as he possibly can with your coordinators, with Josh McDaniels. There's just a lot that's going to be involved. So I don't think Kraft will pull the trigger that quick. Now, 2 seasons, back-to-back, 3 to 4 wins, then we talk about a whole different thing. But I think come his first season into it, 3 to 4 games, I don't think that Robert Kraft will let him go. And if he does, there's going to be another team right on the doorstep to be able to pick him up. The other one, before we close out the show here too, GBG, is Arizona Cardinals. Again, this is just my opinion. I think really have to look into the draft and see what they want to do because Kyler Murray, to me, will never be the answer for the Arizona Cardinals. And on top of that, you have Zach Ertz, who went to out to the desert, comes back, plays with DC. And in a way, I kind of felt bad for Zach Ertz, not because obviously the loss, is because he had to come back to the place where he was at when the Eagles end up going to the Super Bowl. But before I get to Zach Ertz and before we close out the show here, Kyler Murray, in your opinion, is he still relevant in the NFL?
Not. I don't think he is, but at the same time, I don't think he's a lost cause. I think he's still got some good talent, and he could probably be a very good backup. Get you a 1 or 2 games that you need, or kind of carry you along if your starters got injured or something like that. So I don't think his career is over. I just don't think if he stays in Arizona, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, Arizona's going to need a lot of help. And I think Arizona from the front office, just not from Kyler Murray, I think Arizona, the best run they may have had would have been about 5 years ago. I want to say the best run. As the last 3 seasons, Arizona has not done anything. And I don't even think, I mean, you have your hockey team that went to Utah. There might be a problem there. I'm just saying. And I, by the way, Utah Hockey Club, I think you guys should have gone with the Utah Ice or whatever, other than just the Utah Hockey Club. But supposedly allegedly going to rename things come next year. But Zach Ertz comes to Philly against his old team for a second time in the season. And it's just, he had a moment at the end of the game as he was heading out the tunnel and spoke to a former Eagle. And Zach Ertz knows, the whole deal, the way it came down, I didn't like it myself, but again, they had to move on. You bring in Dallas Goedert. I understand. I get it. It would have been nice to see Zach Ertz for one more year back in Philly. I would think he will retire as an Eagle. I don't know if he's going to come back for the Commanders next year. I know his wife obviously is not playing anymore as far as athletics, and they're trying to focus more upon their family and their time together. But, it's just, I think Zach Ertz expected to come to Philly and kind of give a little shade to the Eagles by saying, see, we beat you and you missed out on something. But thankfully, the Eagles had better plans. You may not have followed Zach Ertz, but do you believe this tight end now? He's not. I mean, it's only been 9 to 10 years Zach Ertz has been around the league. But is it a point in time where maybe he doesn't come back with the Commanders?
I mean, maybe. Like you said, I really haven't followed his career that much, so I really don't know about him. But just from seeing him yesterday, I think he still has a lot to play for. And if he really wants to play again, now coming back to the Commanders, that's a whole nother story if he wants to stay there or not. But I still think he's got some left in the tank, as they say, some oomph in there a little bit, you know. So I don't see why, if he really wants to play, I don't see why he wouldn't come back. Maybe at a different team. I don't know what the contract situation is, but I can see him playing at least another year from what I seen yesterday. He's still got it.
Yeah, he does. He definitely does. And again, the Eagles who pull off the victory, much needed victory, because Lord knows in Philly during the wintertime, not only are we waiting for spring to happen because it gets so cold, dark, and miserable, thankfully, we're able to pull off yet another win. And I say we as in I'm part of the team there, but nonetheless, I'm glad the Eagles were able to pull it off. A major victory that was much needed to get that monkey off the back from last year, get things firing up in the right place. 2 weeks you guys have time to repair and to heal. Obviously, they'll be off today. More than likely, they'll probably be off till Wednesday to get themselves ready and prepared. Thursday, Friday, they'll go through practice, and then come, Sunday, they'll start making their way down to New Orleans. And then, of course, everything follows the hectic schedules that they're about to learn. Nick Sirianni now for a second time, because again, a couple years ago when this happened out in the desert, no one expected, including myself, for the Eagles to be there. That's why I think, and I'm going with this, to me, has the entire vibes of 2017. And it was nice to see that Nick Foles was on the podium last night to hand over the NFC Championship trophy to Jeffrey Lurie and to Nick Sirianni. And by the way, Joe says, as we're getting ready to close out the show here, the Pats signed offensive linemen to their practice squad Friday. Michael Jordan, Vrabel is making moves. And please, folks, don't get it confused with the former MJ, as in 23, that played basketball. They signed him in January of 2024, an up-and-coming stud. He's 26 years old. That's good. Listen, if Vrabel's already making moves, that's really good.
Oh, yeah, for sure. If he's going to take over that job, he's starting to make moves already, that shows that he's committed and he's ready to get on it and start making the team better.
You have to. Any head coach, once you come in, to me, you got to, when a press conference is done, I'm just going in there. I'm just like, are we done? All right, let me get to work. Take off the tie, whatever it is that you have on, take off the jacket, go straight to work, because that's why you got hired. If I'm going to prove my worth to the organization, especially if they spend millions on me, I'm going to show them, okay, we're done anymore. Am I done with radio? Good, let's go. And start getting work done. And I'm quite sure that's what Vrabel's doing out there in New England. The same way, I would think the same thing when it comes to the Bears, when it comes to Ben Johnson. You have to immediately have that mindset to go to work. Liam Cohen, I don't know what's going to happen with Jacksonville, because it was just that part of of Liam Cohen's legacy, unfortunately, it's going to be up in the air only because of the way it ended up happening. I think, and I mentioned this before, if he would have went to the front office and said, listen, you guys, my son came first, you know the situation, autoimmune disease, we had to make sure he was healthy. Let me get to the office. You get to the office, and even though you just signed that extension, that's when you tell them, listen, the opportunity's there with Jacksonville. Shad Khan talked to me. He got rid of their GM. Now I have the ability of bringing in my own people that I want. And I don't know how many of these opportunities I might have. Not saying that if he would have hung around with the Buccaneers for another year, if he would have had that same opportunity. But at this point, GBG, I mean, to me, I think that's you calling Todd Bowles, the Glacier family, the GM, bring everybody in. You have that conversation. I don't think Bucs fans would have been as hurt as the way he did it, basically via text message saying, I'm out, see you guys.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of has to do with too is a lot of the people that I think that are upset is we grew up with the gentleman's agreement, the handshake, or I'm giving you my word that hey, I'm gonna do this. If you wouldn't have told him, hey, I'm gonna, I'm coming back to you guys, whatever. I didn't take the job or this and that, but once you give that agreement, me personally, that's like a bond. That's like he signed the contract already. But I guess that's just not how things work anymore, I guess. And that's what really bothers me is he gave that gentleman's agreement and say, hey, I'm coming back, and then, turn around and no, I'm leaving. So that's just that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. No, listen, it's a pisser. It's a pisser. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot more things talked about. GBG, who always does a great job this season, came on board with us here on the Coastal Sports Network and covered the Bucs. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming up here in the next couple of weeks. I'm pretty sure we'll be on top of it and reporting it for you guys here as I'm here in the Tampa region. So we follow the Bucs here closely, and we'll continue to kind of dissect what's going to happen. We've still got to figure out what's going to happen with Todd Bowles. But in the meantime, also, we've got a Super Bowl coming up. We have the Pro Bowl coming up this Sunday as well. So lots to talk about within the next 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. But thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Joe, for the comments. Also to Joey B., Rick Marcus, to Penguin AZ, obviously for GBG joining me here on the line, and especially for Trevor Harris, once again from 560 WQAM out there in Miami. Don't forget to follow his podcast, the Upper Bowl Podcast. We'll end up having a great time listening in. Joe says, Pete and Trevor, I have to go. I have to get moving to a meeting. Have a great day. You all as well. Joe, you as well. And I'll make sure I'll let Pete know that.
I think Joe behind, Angel.
I think so, possibly. Possibly a little bit, but Joe, enjoy your meeting. Have a great day. For everybody else, thank you all for tuning in. We do appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy, more importantly, if you're an Eagles fan, the win, the NFC Championship, and everything that follows coming up this week. Don't forget, coming up after me, my hermano, The Drive with Q, Rich Quinones, from 4 to 6 p.m., Bees World from 6 to 7:30 tonight, and then closing out the night, Lloyd Vance's Insider Football with Kevin Midget from 8 to 9:15 p.m. Thank you all. Have a great day and enjoy it.